Alright, welcome back for another episode. I'm going to be doing a nice little landscape drawing of one of my favorite viewpoints in Yosemite on top of Pothole Dome up in Tuolumne Meadows. I'm going to be using some 98-pound Canson media paper, very smooth, very little tooth. And I'm going to be using vine charcoal, willow charcoal, with a gummy eraser and a paper wiper. And I might use some white charcoal for this one. So, alright, let's get to it. First thing I want to do is, like always, I'm going to tone down my paper here. Just get rid of the white paper. The reason I like to do this is it evens out all the tones that I'm going to be using. And a lot of times later on, when you go to have highlights, you want the highlights to be the white paper and not anything else. I'm just going to take an old piece of fabric, shirt sleeve, an old sock. Microfiber cloth works really well. Paper towel, napkin, whatever you have laying around. Just make sure it's dry and just wipe it down. In fact, I might do one more pass here. Up here. Up in the sky area. There we go. I kind of have the sky a little bit darker on this one. We'll go a little bit more contrast in this one. Alright, and maybe this time I'll just take my paper, this is a piece of paper, and I'm just going to wipe this in, push this in all over. Little piece of cloth here, and just rub this in. Alright, that's good for now. This viewpoint that I'm going to be working with is from a couple years ago. One of the last days I had in Yosemite when I was working as an instructor for the Yosemite Conservancy. The last night I had after class, I drove up to Tuolumne Meadows and I hiked up to the little Pothole Dome on the west side of Tuolumne Meadows at about 4 in the afternoon. I sat up there the entire afternoon. I watched the sun go down and I watched the Milky Way come up. And one of the cool things I remember was this view right in here. Something like this. Put this guy up here. These two peaks. Well, there was a lot of peaks. You can see Mount Dana to the east in the back. Big 13,000 foot Mount Dana. And then you can see part of the Cathedral Range. You have Mathis Crest, Echo Peaks, and then you have further to the east a little bit, or to the west, you have Cathedral Peaks. What I'm going to be doing now here is a view of Unicorn Peak and Coxcomb. These little kind of, I call it the Hershey Kiss. It just kind of sticks up, just like this little point comes up here. It's really a unique feature. And I kind of want the sky to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to go ahead with my vine charcoal. I'm going to lay it on its side. This is just a piece of vine charcoal. And I'm just going to draw in my sky a little bit darker. I almost want it to look like an old black and white photograph. That's nice there. Nice and dark. We're going to have a lot of contrast in this one. And maybe we'll have some clouds. So how do we do clouds? People always ask, how do you do clouds? They're so weird. They, don't really know how to do clouds. Well, with charcoal, it's very easily. And it should be very low stress, because if you mess clouds up, you can just wipe them down and do them again. I'm going to get my gummy eraser here. And I'm going to get a nice crumbly little bit of it here. And I'm just going to start popping in some cloud shapes. Right in here. Just using the side of my eraser and just moving it around. When it gets too dirty, just break it off and have another one. And push these clouds right off the top of that. Right off the top of that. There's a couple over here. And look at these cool marks you can get. You can almost use it like a paintbrush. And I'm not really looking at anything. I'm just putting up just some marks up here. Lifting up some of that charcoal off the paper. Going to have something in the sky that's going to look like. Well, here's a trick with the with the gummy eraser. If you get a nice clean spot, you hit it and it'll lift all that charcoal up. It'll be a nice bright spot. But if you leave it on that same spot, it kind of becomes a blending machine. And you can soften up some of the edges of these clouds. So you have a nice soft sky. Skies usually have a lot of softness to them. They have a lot of atmosphere in them. And the cool thing is, if you don't like them, you can just get your charcoal and you can draw them right out. Maybe we get a little bit darker up here, right up towards the edge of that paper. Some dark areas, right up in here. All right, that's enough for the sky for now. The features here that we're going to be using here that we're looking at, the features, there's a lot of lines that come down here. There's like this slope, this cliffy slope that comes down the entire way, and then there's a little bit of snow that comes down here. And this is my tree line, and I'm thinking I'm going to have my tree line more down like that. And so we'll just wipe it out. And just that easy, you can get rid of things you don't want. And then a little area here is going to be snow, and then this just keeps falling down. Just this cliff that kind of rolls off. There's a smaller patch of snow up here, and it dives back into a shadow part back here. This is an area that's back in that shadow back there. We'll have that back in the shadow. This area out here has a nice little snow bit on it. Cuts into granite, and then Coxcomb has a big snowfield right here. It's just this big snowfield. I'm going to eventually pull it up, and you know, right now I'm making the snowfield darker. The only reason I'm doing that is because I then want to be able to make it lighter. But there are some rocks that stick out of it right in here that we're going to play with. A little bit right in here, and then here we have some darker granite pieces right in here, right in here. And I'll go back in, and I just want to put some texture down. Now, kind of ruining my lines, you have to remember kind of where you're putting them. So I just want to put some texture down, and I'm going to get something down on the paper. Okay, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to make some lines with my gummy eraser. I'm going to pull that charcoal up off the page. So I just make a knife, and this coxcomb is going to get this nice edge to it. Look at this. Just keep folding it back, and you almost literally draw with light. In this case, there's snow. That was still up there when I was there. I was there in the end of May, and these areas up in Tuolumne Meadows, they tend to be a touch higher than some of the places down in the valley. So they get some of that snow. And that's what I'm going to be putting in here, is this nice snow field right here. So now I'm going to be pulling up some of this material that I just laid down. And you can make this kind of indication of this high, it's not necessarily a glacier, but it kind of looks like those high, what's left of those glaciers up there. Some of that perma-snow. Sometimes these snow areas, they'll hang on till middle of July. They get those sun cups you have to walk through. All right, a little bit more detail up here. That bright granite. It's almost hard to distinguish between the bright granite areas and those areas that are covered in snow. Bring that snowfield down into here. All right, right down into here. All right. Now some of these little black marks, you want to leave those. It kind of gives the indication that there might be a rock there and the snow kind of is covering up, going over the top of it. And this back portion here is covered in snow. Use that edge. Break off a piece and paint that in. Break off a piece, oops. Break off a piece, get that clean edge, put it right in there. Paint. I do a lot of painting as well. In fact, that's what I predominantly do, but I use these charcoal studies as a guide for some of my bigger landscape paintings. They're easier because what they do is they let you just focus on form and contrast in areas of light and dark. And you don't have to fiddle with color. When you start fiddling with color, it'll make your brain go crazy. Trying to match hues, tints, shades. warm colors, cool colors. Now there's a snowfield right up on the top of here that I want to get nice and white. I'm just going to push real hard, get this snowfield right in there. There's our snowfield. Let's get a bigger piece. All right, big clump of eraser, and I'm just going to let this play. I'm just going to dab it and roll it. Dab it and roll it. And look at all the different kinds of texture that you can get right in here. This is going to kind of suggest granite texture, rock texture. And you can pull this to kind of indicate that rock falls straight down. A little bit up here. There we go. Ledge has a little bit of light on it. Down into here. And then we have that other snowfield right in here. But let's get to this texture on the sky a little bit first. A little bit of texture here. All right, there's a little dark area right up in here. I'll kind of just accentuate some of the areas up here with small little lines. Kind of give the indication of that these things are nice and jagged and steep. There's Echo Peaks up there, Unicorn, Cathedral. It's part of the Cathedral Range actually, and if you're ever in Yosemite and you feel like there's too many people down in that valley looking at those waterfalls, just go on a little drive up to Tuolumne Meadows. And I've been up there sometimes in the middle of summer and kind of feel like you're the last man in the Sierras, to be honest. Hike up to that Pothole Dome. Or my favorite thing to do there is, after a hike, go jump in Tenaya Lake, that big lake right after Olmsted Point's right on the road. Jump in that lake, float out on that lake. It'll just wake you right up. It's really good. A couple little lines here, twisty little lines, twisting this and dragging it down. And it kind of gives it a little variation. And you can add as many of these as you need to. Now right in here we start getting into that snowfield, and there starts to be some little trees that are growing right in here. And the way I like to do little trees is just tapping my charcoal, tap, tap, tap on the paper. So watch, just tap in some of these trees right in here. Right in here, I'm just going to tap some of these trees. And this kind of gives the indication that there's trees growing that are a little bit too far off in the distance. So let's go back to our eraser, and I'm just gonna lightly blend this together and give some texture. Roll this down, roll that thing around there, and you can kind of make these marks that suggest that there's some texture on these things. Maybe a couple little trees growing up on the shaded side. And then draw some lines in, some contour lines. All right, that's looking good. I'm gonna go ahead and put in this nice white area of snow that's right in here. Using my eraser, clean it off, and just wipe this in. And you need to push hard to get some of the snow to kind of look like snow. And a little trick later about the snow. See what we can do with the snow later. And it kind of just comes down, little pockets here and there, little indications of trees that are growing. Maybe there's a couple trees that are just growing right out in the middle of the snowfield. Let's brighten up this snowfield just a little bit. He's getting dark up there. There we go. Maybe some trees back here. Just little indications, hitting it there. And there's a darker area that kind of sits in here. Shade this up a little bit. Shade this up here. Kind of comes down, there's some more rocky areas. Then, go back in with the eraser and just let it dance around. Let it dance around. Give it some texture. And then we'll give it some trees and follow the contours. If you follow those contours, it's going to look like they're growing down that slope. That's the important thing here, is you follow the slope of these contours. And your trees will kind of have that indication of following that slope. Snowfield in here. All right. Nice. That's looking good. Now, we're going to have some down here. We're going to have some bigger trees that are going to come up here. So I'm just going to start using the edge of my charcoal here. I'm just going to start adding indications of some medium range trees just by doing some zigzagging. And this is going to be really dark down in here. So I'm just going to keep doing some zigzags and push up here and there and here. All across this whole page. Make sure you don't just make some M's. You don't want to do that. That's not good. Sit there for a minute, develop one, and move on to another one. Change your location and give it some nice variety. Maybe once in a while we'll go in and draw a couple of these a little bit better in just a second. But this is going to get nice and dark. Now, we go back in here with our little bit of gummy, and you can just start tapping in, make kind of a vertical bit, just start tapping in indications of, I guess, tree shapes is what we're looking for. Kind of vertical tree shapes. Don't want it to be too light. Some of these trees that come up, you can take some of these and you can kind of develop them. You can give them just a little bit of character. Now, I guess you could do it to all of them, but you'd be sitting here for the rest of the day. So just a couple little indications of, and that'll kind of, what that does is it kind of tells the viewer that you took some time to do some of these. You were looking at them. Especially this one right up in that snowfield. Right in there. Just a little bit of detail there. Keep it nice and dark. Maybe this one will get a little bit of indication of the little tree. And a couple other ones. Switch to a bigger piece of vine charcoal. Maybe these ones have a little bit more. Just really quick. It's very painterly, I guess you would say, right? Use a system of marks to represent something in real life. That's part of that illusion. That's why we love doing artwork, because that's that illusion that happens where you can make a couple marks with charcoal and suddenly you have a tree, or suddenly you have a rock living there. Alright, that's enough of it. You get the idea here. Now there's one more thing I'm going to try, and if I really want, normally I don't do it all the time, but I thought I'd do it for this one. Usually I just work with vine charcoal, and that's about it, but in this case, if you want that white to really come off that paper, there's one thing you can do, and you can use a little bit of white chalk. In this case, I'm using a Prismacolor or New Pastel, and it's just straight white, and I'm just going to bring it in here and just color it in very lightly. And that's going to kind of give it a little more, that snowfield. It's just going to give it a little more extra emphasis, some more brightness. And it starts to kind of look like the wind's been like throwing the snow all over the place. You can kind of start seeing areas of the snowfield. Maybe right up here, a little highlight there, touch up here. And I just start painting it in, almost like the surface of water. And maybe a little bit back here, catching that afternoon sunlight. Right in there. Maybe a little bit down in here, some pockets of snow down in here. All right. And if you wanted to even lay it on its side and draw a couple little highlighted areas on your little clouds up here. And again, it's very forgiving. It's chalk. If you don't like it, you can go ahead and wipe it right away. Charcoal, and it can get covered right up. All right. If you haven't been up to Tuolumne Meadows, get up there, take a walk through the meadow, hike up Pothole Dome, take a look at the Cathedral Range, sit down and do a little drawing. All right. That about wraps it up for this. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for another episode.